an archetype of a royal, ideally a medieval royal. Now, you might not know too much about English history, but if you had been Queen Elizabeth I or King Henry VIII, if somebody didn't say or do what you liked, it was off to the tower, and if you weren't careful, it was off with your head. Their power was absolute. And so when they said something, they expected to be listened to. As a principal, young students would come and say, how is it you can stand up in front of a room of 600 people and you just say very quietly, I'm waiting? And the children would all sit ready listening. I can remember one student coming in and saying, I could dance naked in front of them and they wouldn't take any notice of me. And the difference is she didn't expect to be listened to. I did. And of course, if I gave children an ultimatum, a choice, and they chose the wrong choice, then I followed through because I had the confidence to do that. So if you want a great relationship with other people, the absolute place to start is with you. To recognize that you are an amazing, unique human being. There is only one of you. Even if you're a twin, there's still only one of you. And that you have the most amazing potential to be and do so much if you believe in it. But if you have no confidence in yourself, no self-worth, the likelihood is that you're going to find it difficult to create appropriate boundaries and certainly maintain them. So if somebody's nasty to you, unkind to you, unreasonable to you, then it's very difficult for you to deal with that because they have the power. One of the things that happens in so many relationships is that the power is given to other people to make us feel happy or secure, safe, confident. And if you give the power to other people, then you have to put up with what they give you. So if you've given your power to your partner to make you feel happy, to make you feel strong and whole, then if they're having a bad day, then by default, so do you. Setting and creating appropriate boundaries means understanding what your values are. And I've done a lot of relationship work over the years. And one of the things that I found, and I'm sure Paulette will have lots to tell us about this, but one of the things that I have found is if you have core values that are mismatched, unless you are aware of that and you do some work around it, it can be a really detrimental thing to any relationship. If you have no confidence in speaking up, or that you don't believe that you're going to be listened to, that has an erosive impact on your sense of self-worth. When you are confident, when you do love who you are, and somebody doesn't listen to you, and I'm not talking about the once or twice because they're busy engaged in something else, but because they're really not interested, you don't go and try and make them listen to you. You recognize and you say, thank you, but you're not for me. I can remember working with a lady who had a history of toxic relationships. She went for the bad boys. She found them exciting. And to start with, they would be the best thing since sliced bread. But very quickly, it turned into a power game. And they became controlling and she became needy. And as a result, after a while, that relationship would break down. And then she'd go off into another relationship and another and another. And when I first started working with her, she was talking about all these relationships, I said, have you noticed the pattern? She was surprised. She looked at me as if to say, what pattern? But when you looked at each of them, although the hair color might be different, although the job they did might be different, there might be different heights and different waistlines, the same type of people, the same characteristics and the same problems. Soon after we'd started working with one another, she met a different guy and she said to me, I don't know if this is the right one for me. He's too nice. He treats me so well. And I said to her, why is that a problem? It might not feel familiar because of the pattern of all of the people that you've been working with. But why are you dismissing it? And of course, it was because she didn't think she deserved it. But having worked on her self-worth and hung in there on the relationship, what she recognized is that the things that she had found unfamiliar were actually in line with her true values once she knew what they were. And as a result, they started to go out. They're now happily married and have been happily married for some years. But it wasn't until she created a loving, caring relationship with her that she was able to sustain a loving relationship with someone else. Do you know what your core values are? You know, there are huge issues if your core values around money, family, trust and fidelity, sex are different with your partner. I find it interesting that people will often go into a relationship very quickly before they really know one another. And I'm sure that's the chemicals talking. But then living with someone is very different to going out with them. And that's when the core values really matter. And learning to love someone unconditionally doesn't mean you have to be a doormat, but loving someone without the bartering. And so many relationships are based on this power bartering. I'll do this for you if you do this for me. And if you don't do this for me, well, I'm going to withdraw. And you find that many couples, the one bit of power that they have, that they use very frequently, is the power of withdrawing emotional support. I will only love you if you are like this. I'll only love you if you do this, rather than I don't like what you're doing, but I love you to bits. But actually, that really is something that makes me feel uncomfortable. Please don't do it. Big difference. And I want you to think about that as we move into the next section, where I'm going to speak to Paulette, and she's going to share her story, which is an amazing one, and to share with you her expertise and experience, which is very significant. So after the break, come and join us. And I'm really thrilled to have Paulette Rigo going to join us in a moment. See you soon.
You have been listening to Gina Gardner on Leadership for Life. We'll be back after this quick break. Want to get the best out of life personally and professionally? Are you ready to step into a life which excites and fulfills you? Well, the right place for you is Leadership for Life with Gina Gardner on W4CY Radio and Talk4 TV. We will share with you stories from inspiring people, a wide range of guest experts, and lots of practical strategies to help you get the very best out of your personal and professional life. Leadership for Life is a radio and TV show focused on helping you live a happier, more successful, and fulfilling life. Join international best-selling author, motivational speaker, empowerment and transformational leadership coach and trainer, Gina Gardner, live every Thursday, 1 p.m. Eastern Time on W4CY Radio and Talk4 TV. Become the leader of your own life. Gina Gardner's #1 international best-selling book, Thriving Not Surviving, The 5 Secret Pathways to Happiness, Success, and Fulfillment, provides you with the foundational principles on which to become the best leader of your own life. It's available as an ebook, paperback, hardback, and as an audio from genuinely-u.com, or also from Amazon. Every one of the principles have been proven to work for the countless people who have used them, including the author. Now, let's put them to work for you. If you're ready to discover your true leadership life design, accelerate your journey with an invitation to join Gina for Leadership for Life VIP Day. Choose your journey of self-discovery where Gina will help you navigate your way to happiness, success, and fulfillment. To find out more, email gina@genuinely-u.com. Welcome back to Leadership for Life. Here is your host, Gina Gardner.
Hello there. Welcome back. And in a moment, I'm going to share the show with Paulette Rigo. But before I do, I'd like to read you her bio, Those of you that watched the show before know that I read the bio because these are so rich and I don't want to get anything wrong. Paulette Rigo is a mediator, certified divorce coach, transition and recovery coach, career transition specialist, author of Better Divorce Blueprint in the online course, book, planner, and No Matter What card deck, co-host of the Thriving in Chaos project with attorney Sonia Kuralt, host of Best Life Ever virtual retreats, and founder of Better Divorce Academy. Her commitment to creating an optimal divorce experience is her life's work. It's Paulette's personal and professional experience and expertise that make her strive to create a better way to divorce from the early stage of contemplation to the necessary final steps of healing, using practical tools, inspiration, and a proven mediation and negotiation model. So, without more ado, let me welcome Paulette Rigo.
Good.
Hi there.
Hi, Gina. It's such a pleasure to be here with you.
It's great to have you here. And, when we're talking about relationships, it's so easy to just talk about when things go right or just talk about when things go wrong. But it seemed to me that to have the balance, ideally you want things to go right. But so often these days, they do go wrong, and sometimes quite spectacularly. But before we get into your work, tell us about your story.
Absolutely. Well, in a nutshell, this would have to be a 5-hour radio show, all of the details. But, if you were to tell me, we had a conversation years ago that I was going to do the work I do, I would have said to you, Gina, you're crazy. But, it found me. And I do believe that when we find our purpose and we really authentically, genuinely live like you preach, which I adore everything that you stand for, you really can't help but do the work that you do if you were meant to do it. So I, at the tender age of 17, fell in love and I had a Barbie and Ken relationship. It looked perfect, and it was really healthy in so many ways. I went to college, got married, had 3 beautiful children, and woke up one day feeling like nothing fit. Everything just felt like I was living someone else's life. It felt a little bit like half fairy tale and half just a confusing journey of mishmash. Didn't really understand how I got where I got because I was always allowing everyone else to make my own decisions for me. And I find so many women allow us to just do that. It's like we have this long list of things that we're supposed to achieve as women, check, check, check. And before you know it, you wake up and you say, where am I? Who am I? So I ended up making a major decision to stop a career that I had fallen into for 20 years of running and managing a dance studio. Loved being a dance teacher, but it really wasn't my purpose. It wasn't who I was meant to be. I could point my toes and do pirouettes and it all just felt so natural and teaching and all, but it still never felt like me. And then the marriage felt like it just wasn't. It wasn't a good fit. It felt like we weren't living congruent lives. All of our decisions were kind of on automatic pilot. And again, letting all those family members and outside influences make our decisions for us. So long story short, after I'd quit a career of 20 years of teaching and performing and choreographing and running a performing arts studio, I became a stay-at-home hockey mom and or soccer mom, as they're called, football mom in the States. In the overseas in the UK, and realized, wow, okay, what is the next chapter? So I ended up starting my own registered yoga school and trained many, many yoga practitioners to become teachers. And through that long, congruent process, I started to find a little bit more about what made me tick and what made me really congruently happy. So I filed for divorce eventually after 20 years of marriage, thinking it would be a very amicable one. And it was nothing of the kind. I happened to be the 1% that endured an 8.5-year fully litigated divorce trial all the way to the Supreme Appellant Court in our state. And it taught me so much about the law and finances and parenting and mental health and really how to live a life that is authentic and genuine. And here I am. I founded Better Divorce Academy as a way, after becoming a registered mediator and certified divorce coach. I'm also a doula, a certified macrobiotic cook and counselor, as well as a registered yoga teacher trainer. So that journey, and that took about 15 to 20 years to uncover, of stepping into my own voice and power, and now being able to really hold the hands of women, although I have several male clients as well, through the very beginning sense of confusion. I'm not exactly sure, I can't put my thumb on it, but there's something about this relationship, something about this marriage that doesn't feel connected. There's something that's gone wrong here. And you know that 70% of divorce is filed by women. I had no idea about that.
No.
That completely threw me for a loop, and particularly, and that's an international statistic. It isn't just here in the States, but I also have clients in Canada, US, UK, and the Caribbean, in Central America. So, and that average amount of time that 70% of women that file have that internal dialogue with themselves privately before they even have the courage to utter those words out loud is 2 years. And those 2 years are scary years of confusion, overwhelm, so much fear, sadness, guilt, blame, and anxiety.
I'm sure they are. I mean, 8.5 years sounds horrendous.
Yeah, sometimes when I think back of it, it feels like a lifetime. It almost feels like someone else's life that I was living. It really changes so much about you, and so much, it changed so much about me as a person. But it also taught me so much, Gina. I do consider it a gift. It made me wiser, smarter, stronger, more confident, and a lot more at peace.
I'm sure it did, but I have to say, for people who are in that 2 years of confusion, what would you say to them? You know, imagine I'm one of your people that have approached you and said, I'm in a marriage, I'm not happy, it doesn't feel right. What pearls of wisdom would you give them in that stage of thing, at that stage?
Sure, that's a great question. Well, I would start with listening to your inner voice. We typically turn down or dial down that internal message that we get from our soul telling us or whispering, there's something wrong, and we don't want to hear it, so we whisper. But there are 21 main reasons why divorce happens. I can run through them quickly, or put a PDF out there if you'd like in the show notes, because it might take some time.
What would be useful, I think, is if you could run through them very quickly and then perhaps just choose 2 to do in a little bit more detail, your top
Absolutely.
2, if that would work. Right. Yeah.
So the top 21, of course, and they're not in any particular order. No. So anyone think that this is the order. But number 1, of course, infidelity. That's the one everyone thinks is the 99% of reasons why marriages fail. So number 2 is money. Money is a big one. Number 3, lack of communication. Number 4, constant bickering and arguing with no outcome. Number 5, weight gain. Sounds superficial, but very true. Number 6, unrealistic expectations. Number 7, a lack of intimacy. 8, a lack of equality, where both partners don't feel that they're on an even playing field. Yeah. Number 9, not being prepared. 50% of divorce happens between the 4th and the 8th anniversary. So really? on in the marriage where you just don't feel that you took enough time to prepare for a healthy relationship. Number 10, abuse. And there are 7 different types. So we typically think of physical and sexual, but there are also financial, spiritual, emotional, mental, and psychological abuse. Number 11, addiction. And addictions form in many different colors. Number 12, different parenting styles. Parenting styles can be conflicting in many ways. Number 13, didn't marry for love. Sounds sad, but many people don't marry for love. And I don't just mean like arranged marriages in some cultures, that is to be understood. Number 14, lack of disclosure or sincerity, where there really isn't that sense of sincerity jumping into it. 15, lack of identity or self-esteem. 16, irreconcilable differences, which is what we hear, sometimes there's an uncontested divorces where you just really can't, you agree to disagree. Number 17, long distance. That can be a determining factor for some people. Number 18, interference from parents and family. That's a tough one. 19, jealousy and insincerity, where there's a lot of jealousy and green-eyed monsters. 20, control struggles. Who runs the purse strings, who makes the decisions, and who's the good parent, who's the bad parent, all those sort of leveling the playing field, and who has control and likes to keep control. And lastly, your spouse is gay, and you're just unwilling to look the other way. So those are the top 20 reasons. If I were to focus on just the top ones, I'm going to stick with abuse and different parenting styles. So abuse can be really challenging because, again, there are 7 different ways of seeing abuse rearing in its ugly head. And we don't always like to talk about them. And domestic violence is naturally one that, if someone is being harmed in any way, you've got to get out. At least get help. Find a friend where you can find a shelter, whether that be a friend's basement, anywhere. You've got to get yourself out of a dangerous situation. But there's those underlying, not quite so overt, but more covert forms that can really eat away at your self-esteem and self-confidence. And it makes you feel as if something's wrong with you, that you're going crazy, and that you really don't know your reality. Sometimes it's called gaslighting, when you feel like your reality isn't being acknowledged or it's denied. That can be very confusing. So if you feel that there's really a sense of being talked down to and criticized and belittled, disregarded, disrespected, it can weigh very heavy on your shoulders. So I recommend getting help, making sure that you are not feeling alone. And when it comes to parenting,
just before you do, because I'd rather, before we move away from this, because I think it's such a big thing. I was listening to the news in the UK, and during the pandemic, when people have been locked down, they reckon that abuse has gone, the reports of abuse, and that's only the tip of the iceberg, have gone up 8-fold.
Oh, my dear, it's such a disturbing statistic, but so true. Do you know the divorce rate originally went up 34%? Now we're hearing it's 40% because of the pandemic. And abuse is becoming harder to hide, because when you're outside of the home, I can live my life, you can live yours. The elephant in the living room, as they say, is easier to hide under the rug and sort of sweep under the rug when you can sort of, skirt the issues.
Well, if you're out of the house, I tell you another time when divorces seem to me to happen is when one or both partners retire. And it's the same sort of thing, that you're spending much more time in each other's company with less opportunity to escape.
Yes.
But what strikes me is, I'd be really grateful for your opinion around how often these types of abuses are combined. So that the physical abuse with emotional and mental abuse and control, because I've worked with a number of abused people, and I have to say, one of the questions that really strikes me is, why didn't you leave sooner? And so often it's because people felt that whether it's better the devil that you know than the unknown devil that you don't, or whether it's they've been so battered that they don't believe that they could exist on their own. I don't know, but I'd be very interested for your take on that.
Absolutely. You know that when you are in a circumstance that feels familiar, you start to get very comfortable. It's what you know.
Yeah.
And you don't really know that there's a better way of living. So you start to normalize the pain. You start to get comfortable in the confusion.
Yeah.
And when things become, I don't know, unfamiliar, it makes people unsettled. Like, people don't like change.
No.
And it becomes very comfortable, that comfortable sweater, that comfortable pair of socks, that comfortable pair of jeans that we go to. We have our routines. And when the norm or the routine is broken, it becomes unsettling. And people that are over 50, they tend to be stuck in their ways. What's that saying of,
can't teach a dog new tricks.
The old dogs don't like new tricks. So I've even had people renovate their kitchens, and they do it in the same exact layout. Maybe they have a new countertop, but the refrigerator's in the same spot. So marriages and relationships, whether you're married or not, tend to be something that we get really comfortable with, and we like the norm. But fear has a lot to do with it. So when you start to question that unsettling 2-year point, and you start to consider, what are my options? It's a big thought process of really going through, feeling your feelings, deciding what you want, being responsible for yourself, and understanding what are the deal breakers. If there is a deal breaker, a red flag that cannot be adjusted or changed, that's something that you really need to consider, and how to prepare and protect yourself so that you know that there is a better alternative.
It's an interesting one, isn't it? I'm reminded of this. They did a terrible experiment in the 50s. May have mentioned it on the show before, where they put frogs into cold water and they heated the water up. And the frogs didn't jump out because the water got hot gradually. Whereas when they dropped frogs into boiling water, the frogs jumped out. And I think marriage and relationships can be very much like that. It's not until you take a step away and you look at what's been going on that you realize that what's been going on is toxic.
Beautiful point. And that's one of the reasons I started to do retreats, is to break the norm. Let's think of the word retreat, when you withdraw or remove yourself from the norm. Because when you become so inoculated, right, where you feel numb and unconscious or disconnected to what the norm is, and is this normal? And you start to spend more time with people that are healthier or more aware, more, I hate to use the word enlightened, but more awakened to the fact that, there's a different way to live, where you can, ignorance is not bliss. No. It really isn't. You say, ignorance is bliss. Not when it comes to relationships. You really need to step into clarity and understand that there is a different way of living that is healthier and better. Now, many marriages can be saved. I'm not pro-divorce. No. Just like I'm not pro-cancer. I am proactive in making the relationship healthier and better, or making healthier decisions to end the relationship with grace and dignity, so that both parties can really live a healthier, happier life. And the children really do know, if there are children. We say that children, are meant to be seen and not heard. Well, they listen. They
do. They do. They pick it up. They pick up the energetic vibration, don't they? When people are being, when they're unhappy, or when they're being angry all the time or frustrated, and they often think it's their fault.
Yeah, they do. They tend to think it's their fault because they're 50% mom and 50% dad. And if dad or mom is bad, then I'm 50% bad. And that is not a great way for children to grow up. And it is scary. So it's a good decision.
That's a great segue to just briefly talk to us about difference in parenting and how that impacts on the relationship between the two parents.
Yeah, it can be summed up easily in the fact that most children see one parent as the good parent and one parent as the bad parent. And I don't mean good or bad as in evil. I mean good as in, oh, mommy or daddy lets me have candy.
Mhm.
Or, this one makes me make my bed and do my homework. Typically when relationships start to go awry, it's like we start here and one parent starts to give less, and then the other has a choice. They can either go down and lift them up, or they can move over and squash them down. And the other parent can do the same with parenting. We can either start to be, don't let them have to eat their carrots tonight, give them a candy bar. And I know I'm talking in simplicity when children are little, but as teenagers,
it gets a whole lot more complicated, doesn't it?
But if parents play one another against each other, it can get very sticky. So when a relationship starts to go awry with parenting, one parent feeds on being I call them the Disney dad or the Disney mom, where they're the good parent, or the ones that give extravagant gift, or the one that go on extravagant vacations. And the other is, did you do your homework? And no, you can't hang out with that friend because I don't think that they're a positive influence on you, or I think you should really strive higher for the AP history class, or whatever the parenting goal is. And we also tend to live vicariously through our children. And those parents that really live vicariously through their children to want them to be doctors or lawyers or dancers or actors or whatever it that is congruent in their family, and the child really doesn't feel that that's something that they want to live up to, they can withdraw from that parent because they feel pressured to have to live up to those expectations. So the other thing is when divorce is imminent, there tends to be a little bit of a power struggle for who makes the decisions. So the four categories in the eyes of the law are religion, medical, education, and extracurricular. So if one parent is in control of all four of those categories, they hold the control. And if the other parent has no decision-making ability, the children naturally will gravitate to the parent that makes the control because they're the one that lets them, go to the school of their choice and not have to get braces or, whatever those decisions are. And they don't want to be with the other parent because the parent doesn't have any decision-making abilities. So it's important that one parent have 50% and the other have 50%. If it's adversarial, if the parents are able to make decisions that are congruent in an alignment with one another, it's always in the children's best interest if both parents are in fact making those decisions together.
Brilliant. So where can people get hold of you? We've been putting your website address on the screen. What would you like to say to people?
The website is probably the easiest way to find me. BetterDivorceAcademy.com is the name of my website. It has a myriad of free resources on there, ebooks and templates and blog posts. I also have a podcast called The Thriving in Chaos Project that I co-host with attorney Sonia Coralt. She's the founder of Divorcify. I also have a pretty large social media following under Better Divorce Academy and my name, Paulette Rigo. So you can find me on LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, and of course the website and the podcast. My book, Better Divorce Blueprint, is coming out in January. And I wrote that because so many of my clients said, I have people that would love to work with you down the road. They're not quite ready for this journey, but they like to have a little bit more education about the process, about can we save the marriage? What can we do to really prepare? There's a lot to consider. Getting organized and understanding the process of gathering information, forming a budget, understanding lawyers speak, how to choose advocates, beginning to really prepare yourself, and then really understanding that you need endurance to get through this, particularly in COVID. 8 to 14 months used to be the average amount of time of a divorce. Now it's more like 2 to 3 years if it's adversarial. And you need to really learn persistence, patience, and perseverance in a level that you've never had. So wellness has a lot to do with this. You need to have strength and support every step of the way. Managing the budget, understanding how to do that, and really getting familiar with the laws in your state or in your county. And also how to have a child-centered divorce, because the decisions that you make will forever influence the chartered course of your children's life and future and your family. And then really understanding what you want the outcome to be, because regret is a terrible thing. And being prepared for that. Things like dating in a digital age and making room for the new and stepping off the overthinking mind. And do you change your name, goal setting, and really having a future that is powerfully and congruently genuine with who you want your next chapter to be, instead of one that you just allow the courts and your lawyer or your mediator, I'm a registered mediator to create for you. You want to be able to steer the steering wheel of the process as much as you can. When you take control and you're involved in the process, the outcome is much better.
Thank you so much. I'm obviously going to have you back on the show. We've run out of time, but thank you very much for joining us. Now, we're not going to go into a break. I'm going to finish the show off because we're running out of time, but I just felt it was so important that we didn't cut that short. So Paulette, thank you so much for joining me. It's been a real pleasure. And I've no doubt that you're going to be back on the show sometime next year. So thank you very much indeed.
My honor.
Thank you. So in the very few minutes that we have left, I want to talk to you about relationships and how you can help yourself create the very best relationship with you. If you go onto the website, genuinely-you.com, you will find that there is a program called the Relationship Bridge. And the Relationship Bridge is all based on how you can create the very best relationship with you. It talks about your beliefs and how you can audit your beliefs and recognize those ones which empower you, they're keepers, and your limiting beliefs, and do something to make them more empowering. It talks about how you treat yourself, whether that voice in your head is being critical and unhelpful, and how to deal with it. One of my clients talks about it as her parrot. And we talked about, well, if you've got a voice in your head that's going on and on and on, moaning at you, and you had a parrot that was doing the same, how would you shut the parrot up? And she said, well, I'd put a cloth over the cage because then the parrot would go to sleep. Exactly. And I said to her, if that fails, then shoot the parrot. It's not a real one. And I'm not for a moment suggesting that you would ever shoot a real parrot. But if that voice in your head is going on and on and on, it's time for you to take control. Within the Relationship Bridge, we talk about you being your own best friend, using the same criteria for you as you do for other people. So go and find out about the Relationship Bridge. It's on genuinely-you.com, and that can help you have a great relationship with yourself. And remember, as I started this show, so I'll finish it. Every relationship you have with other people is a reflection of the relationship you have with you. So it makes sense to have a great relationship with you. Whatever you're doing, I would say to you, please step into your genuine power and become the leader of your own life. I'm really looking forward to seeing you on the next show. I have another great guest. Please share this. Please let other people know so they too can become the leaders in their own lives. Thanks again. Bye-bye now.
You have been listening to The Leadership for Life with your host, Gina Gardner. Make sure you tune in to W4CY Radio and Talk 4 TV next Thursday and every Thursday at 1 p.m. Eastern Time for more Leadership for Life. If you missed any part of this episode or just want to hear or see it again, you can find the archive of the TV show on Talk 4 TV's YouTube channel and the podcast of The Leadership for Life on iHeartRadio, Pandora, Spotify, Amazon Music, and wherever you listen to your podcast.